So where are you at? We're playing the level of concern game today on a scale of 0 to 10. Game 7 of the season, they're 3-3-1 after going 4-4-1 to start last year with the best player on the planet on the team. Now he's with Vegas. But where do you stand in this conversation?
More concerned than I have been the previous years where they got off to rough starts. Like it feels like every year in October we're revisiting this. There was a few years ago where they kind of go out on the West Coast early in the year and they struggled, and then last year they're trying to work through the transition of a new coach and how does that look. And this year I'm more worried because not so much about who walked the door. Like we always knew that was going to be different with this team, but more about the team finding their identity. And that's a huge issue because when stuff hits the fan, you're not playing well. You always go back to what are we at the crux of it? What's the simplest form of what our team is, and that's what you lean on. Well, for the Leafs this year, like they've tried to change things, right? Like they're the heaviest team in the NHL, but they don't play mean, so they look slow and they don't have the puck a lot. And you're like, well, all that kind of just tells me that it's you're stuck in the middle because you got guys that are wired to play a certain way, want the puck, like want to play offensive style of hockey, but are being told and kind of reprogrammed to like, no, this is what we need our team to be. And it looks like a team that doesn't really know what its identity is right now. I think in years past we could say, no, when Sheldon was the coach and they struggled at the beginning of the year, they'll be fine. They'll get there. It's not a big deal. Last year, new coach, everyone's going to really dial in. They're going to get to what they're trying to do. This year feels a little different, so I'm a little more concerned this year. But like you said, Nick, we're 7 games in. There's lots of time, and we've kind of seen this episode from the team in October before.
When you're talking about the change of DNA and like these guys trying to adapt to a new style, and we're watching players who maybe are not wired that way, as you kind of mentioned, you do end up in that gray area. But do you think that this Leafs team and the guys that are on it right now have the ability to change that DNA? Do they have the ability to adapt? Is it that easy? Because we watched them for a full season last year, and for a lot of times I feel like we've watched this era of players, it's always felt like here's the skilled guys at the top who do this one thing, and here's the other group of guys at the other side who can maybe do another, and it's never really blended. And it feels like Craig Berube is asking all of them top to bottom more so to kind of buy into one style rather than having two separate groups. Do you think that these guys are able to do that?
The reality is it always takes the top guys to do, like, to make the transition. Like if the coach is asking you guys to do something different, then the top guys have to do it because then everyone else does it. Like it's like the old Crosby rule, or all the stories you've heard out of Crosby in Pittsburgh. They're all true. Sid, hardest working guy in practice, everyone else has to work hard. Hardest working guy in the weight room, everyone else has to follow suit. Because if you're one of the other guys, you look at it and you say, well, that guy's more talented. He's got more skill. He's better. He makes more money. And I can't let him outwork me that much. So I have to do my part and keep up. And that organization had so much success for a lot of years. And, that's the old lead by example. So if the coach is, trying to tell you guys, like, listen, we have to play a little bit mean. Well, that means the top guys who it's not really normal for, they have to find a way to do it. The thing is, like, if you ask me, can they do it? Of course they can. Like, there's no talent involved in that. Like there's no talent involved in, going into a corner and stopping instead of doing a turn and hoping that you can keep your speed up and get the puck going back the other way. Like those are the little elements that, like, it doesn't really matter how skilled you are. Everyone can do those types of things. So yeah, they can. I think it's more of a question like, will they? Will they actually do those things? And I know there's a lot of negativity around the team right now, and some of it is justified for sure. Let's keep in mind, like, over the last, the team has, won a playoff round. They've had success. Like, it's not accidental. It's the sky's not falling, but I think it more comes down to, your top guys have to do what they almost have to over exaggerate for everyone else to really feel like they could be themselves. I'll give you an example, right? Like, did you watch Dakota Joshua 2 years ago much with Vancouver? Because if you did, you noticed that guy was confrontational and could kind of be proactive in changing the temperature of a game. And for some reason in Toronto, and we've seen this with other guys that are, big and play that style, it seems a little more muted and vanilla. I don't know, like I can't tell you why that is, but like there's an example of like, well, if other guys did it too, it's easier for that player to feel like he can do it and assert himself. It always starts from the top. You're always asking those guys to do it, and then everyone else has to fall in line.
I think we're always looking for signs in this market. You being the former player, how shocked were you that that's the way this team comes out after Anthony Stolarz pretty much essentially called out the entire team? How'd you feel about all that? And like, to me, that's the bigger shock point, was that like that's what you have after that. Not to mention the Blue Jays are off to the World Series. You think they would have a bit more juice?
Yeah, the Stolarz thing doesn't, like, it didn't feel like that. That's not like a galvanizing thing for the group to come out and really rally behind. Like, there would be, like, I'm not in the room, but that's a situation where, players behind the scenes would say it's a bit of a hero move, not necessary. Like, we're all brothers in here. We all kind of go to bat for each other, and we can talk about stuff in here. There's no need to air stuff out in a market where things, even the most vanilla of things, can become inflammatory. Something like that. They're kind of lucky the Jays are doing what they're doing and going to the World Series, because, the Stolarz comments would have caught fire even more. So I didn't think it was particularly smart, even though it caters to the fan base. Sure. It's more, the fan base likes to hear that stuff, but the players in the room don't. And it puts a target on your back unnecessarily. Like, you want to call out Willie for a bad back check. You want to talk about guys not getting in front of their goaltender. It's fine to do all that stuff behind closed doors, but now you put a target on your back, and it's like, don't let any bad, because you're on alert, you're on notice. And, last night there's a couple bad goals that go in, and you're like, why put that much pressure on yourself? So I didn't see that Stolarz kind of calling guys out as this rallying point. I saw it as more, there's some leakiness and some turmoil, and they got to get their house in order, and really show like a united front, as a team, as a group, as brothers. And that I think is going to be a work in progress still after calling out players publicly.
Frankie, I want to get your thoughts on just the line combinations right now and kind of the roster construction. Obviously, missing Scott Laughton is a huge issue. Missing Steven Lorentz to start the year kind of shook things up a little bit too, and you're getting guys playing on different lines and positions and whatever that maybe they shouldn't be, and that's not how Brad Treliving and Craig Berube planned for this to be. But you're kind of scrambling right now through 7. You're trying to find the guy who's going to be the right winger to play on that first line. You tried Michelli, you tried Cowan, you tried Domi last night, and then you look through the rest of the lineup, and it seems like they're just struggling to find combinations. I mean, I'm going to ask you kind of a different parted question here to lead all to one, but like, is this a matter of just lack of chemistry to this point? Do they just need guys to come back? Do they not have the right pieces? What is going on with this lineup, and just how Craig Berube is assembling these guys to be at this point where even as of last night, he's being asked about it, and he's still saying it's kind of frustrating. Even just looking at the first line, they're not getting things going. It's frustrating.
No,
where are you at
man.
with the lineup and the construction?
It's not uncommon for star players to kind of roll through line mates, right? Like in Crosby's heyday, it was Chris Kunitz and Pascal Dupuis. Like, you didn't just put those two guys there. You got there eventually. Like, you did some tinkering to see what worked, and eventually you found the right combination. So I think when it comes to the Matthews line and the revolving door of players that have been there, you probably need to give it a little bit of time with one guy to see it. But if you've seen enough, like if you've truly seen enough, then you keep trying other guys and see what might stick. But this is the part that I kind of see is this. we haven't really had like the Matthews taking over a shift. Like we haven't really seen that this year, unless I'm wrong, unless I missed it. But where Matthews hops onto the ice and he gets the puck in the offensive zone and he rags it along and he circles the net and he leans on someone and maybe he cuts back and then maybe like a little give and go and it's a shot for a good chance. Like it feels like it's, a little bit of a flash, get the puck, take a shot, and it's not getting sustained. And so, then my head goes to, well, I get that there's line mates involved for sure, but if I'm not seeing like the individual really look to dig in and lean, then I'm like, okay, like you got to be a little bit of a self starter yourself. And then the final piece is, well, let's get whoever it's going to be, Yarncroke, Robertson, Domi, Michelli. Like that'll be the last piece. But the first piece is, show that you can kind of carry it to a certain as an individual. And the best compliment you can give those guys, and there's a reason why they make all that money, is because you're supposed to make other players better as well. So that's I think that's a fair comment to make on Austin Matthews' game. Like he has to be able to make other guys better. Has the ability to every once in a while take over a shift. Doesn't mean he has to score. Like he's not going to get the Mitch Marner pass into the slot the way the way he used to, but we're not even really seeing like him really assert himself physically, which no, it doesn't have to be running around, but I'm saying that's my biggest concern right now with the top line. They're not just one piece away. They're one piece away plus the guy who makes $13 plus million playing like a guy who makes $13 plus million.
Yeah, I just refuse to think that one player off this roster and just suddenly they like Matthews can't cook, can't do his thing anymore. I just can't. I just don't think he's playing well. I was talking about it earlier. I was in a box last night and there were Habs fans there, and this guy, he's a Habs media guy, seriously asked somebody beside me, would you rather Nick Suzuki or Austin Matthews? And I said, chill, bro. I said, the question is Nyes or Nick Suzuki. But, like, Matthews has to get cooking here, man. He just, like, watching the game last night, I'm like, dude, you're going to show up? You wore your Vladdy jersey at least.
Yeah. Listen, he's got the ability to play like a top 5 player in the NHL and then some. But this year, it doesn't look that way. The team is struggling, but when the team gets going, it's also because Austin Matthews has gotten going, and like Mitch Marner's gone. There's no life raft now coming in. Like this is the group for the foreseeable future until there's a trade. But keep in mind, like no one's gonna throw you that life raft right now. Like teams are gonna wait a little bit and see who's really desperate and who's going to give us, something plus for what we have that, could help them. And how much artillery does Toronto have to really make a significant trade like that? Like that's an interesting, interesting conversation that we'll keep having, especially if the first line continues to struggle. But like Austin Matthews can be one of the best players in the NHL. And he has to find a way to be a little bit of a, guy that drives the bus even without his usual wingman. And like he's played well with Willie throughout the course of his career. He's played well when Mitch has missed games also. This is not like this shouldn't be that much of a shock to the system, but given the way the team has kind of looked slow and cumbersome and heavy and not mean while doing it all, it kind of accentuates the fact that it's your star guy's not quite playing up to the level he can.
Frankie, just last question for you here. I want to get your thoughts on the challenge last night, the goaltender interference. Now, I'm just a guy sitting at home watching on my couch, and I think a lot of times it feels like watching Jeopardy or playing radio trivia where you're like, wow, I'd be so good at this, but in the moment, not so much. That one felt like, to me at least, the biggest no-brainer, no challenge, good goal of all time. Like, I was shocked that they challenged it. The timing, just how obvious it seemed, everything about it seemed like it was just a goal and there was no need to challenge. Were you as surprised as I was? And or like, am I missing something here? Like, why was that a challenge?
I totally agree with you. That was an interesting one because the guys in the video room, they're usually they are the best. Like their percentage on those challenges is unbelievable. So that was a weird one for me. Felt a little bit like a hope situation. And I think one of the things now with this rule is they've made it very clear that, you know, anyone skates into the blue paint on their own, so they're not pushed in. You know, that seems to be like a pretty big criteria for it coming back. But there was just not even enough. There wasn't enough contact with Stolarz to even consider that being, even though like the guy does skate into the blue paint, but there wasn't enough contact for that goal to come back. So I was surprised by that. And then, you know, the other thing, like there's different bullets coaches have to kind of, you know, get something out of their guys. Like we see it all the time. Coach calls a timeout. They're getting steamrolled. Like the video challenge, I think, even if I'm not saying it was, but if you were just going to throw a prayer out there, it's a tough one, right? Because you sit there on the bench. Some guys will say, hey, maybe there's a chance this comes back and we'll get, you know, kind of let off the hook. And then it doesn't. And then it's deflating. And then you take a penalty and you're like, okay. And that wasn't helping us get anywhere. So I thought that was a weird challenge.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Roseau. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.